really like your mustache, that beard thing that you got going on. Like, uh,
Oh, thank you.
yeah, is that something that you just came up with, or I mean, what was the influence or inspiration between or behind that look?
Well, you always have to choose how you're going to express yourself to the world. And one of the beauties of living in America is that we have that freedom of self-expression, that however we feel on the inside, if we can find a way to present that on the outside that matches us, I feel like we're going to be more successful in the world because we get to be more authentic. I'm someone that I had long hair a lot as a young adult, and then nature began to take that option away from me. So, but I was in my early 30s. I shaved my head and I was like, that's it. Like, because I don't want people saying you've got a lot of hair for a bald guy. It's time to just let nature, admit to what nature is telling you. And then afterwards, when I had no facial hair and no hair on top of my head, I kind of felt like I looked like an old baby a little bit. And I was like, I think it's time for a little upgrade to my style. So I was teaching college at the time, and I said to my intro astronomy students, hey, you're all going to have to write papers for me. And for a lot of you, this is going to be your first scientific paper, your first science paper. And I want to motivate you. So I'll tell you, whoever writes the best paper in the class gets to choose what facial hair I grow. And I promise to keep it for at least 6 months. And if I like it, I'll keep it for longer. This worked. The kids were very motivated. They wrote a lot of excellent papers. And the two kids who won, they got the highest grade. They told me, we want you to grow a goatee with a mustache. And that was what it started as. And then after it grew in more and more, I grew a larger beard, a larger mustache. I wound up shaving my chin because I missed it after so many years. And that's how I got the style I have today. But I enjoy it. I think it suits me. And as far as I can tell, I'm going to keep it for at least a while longer.
Yeah, because I really like it, and it's really unique because I've never really seen that specific look on anyone else.
Well, that's kind of the beauty is you can be inspired by other people who've done things around you, but you can also experiment on yourself. So I use wax in my mustache and I use just moisturizer and shea butter and a wet brush for my beard. And back when I had my chin not shaved, it kind of naturally wanted to fork into two separate sides. And so I just embraced it and I shaved my chin, and now it does this all on its own. So I've got the mustache, I've got the beard, and my shiny, shiny head up top, and it all seems to come together.
Oh, that's great. And now I guess let's get on with it. Uh, so you're an astrophysicist, and we are having this conversation at a really interesting time because we just launched Artemis, and that's a trip around the moon. So I want to get your opinion on that and how groundbreaking that achievement is in itself, because it just seems that we're just so boggled down with so much distractions that no one's really paying attention.
There are a lot of things going on in the world for sure, and I think there's no wrong way to focus your attention on things that need help or things that, we need to take action on. But I think it's always worth pointing out, you know what? If we can put our differences aside for a little while and
Mhm.
work together and build something where we're working together for the collective good, we can achieve amazing things. And Artemis 2 is an example of that. This is the first time in 54 years. So if you're younger than 54 years old out there, this is the first time in your lifetime that humans have ever left low Earth orbit and have traveled to a greater distance than that. Artemis the four Artemis 2 astronauts actually broke the distance record yesterday, at the time of this recording, yesterday on April 6th, for the farthest any human has ever traveled away from planet Earth. And I think that's a really remarkable achievement. They've seen things. They've seen parts of the moon that no human eyes have laid eyes on before. They've seen events on the moon, like the striking of four separate impact events on the moon's dark side at night that that no one has ever seen with their own eyes before. And I think this is really an amazing thing for humanity to realize. If we put our differences aside, if we work together to do positive, amazing things, we can actually build the science fiction dreams of our imagination and make them reality.
Right.
And so I think Artemis, unlike all the uncrewed missions we've sent out that have explored the universe and gotten information about it, actually sending humans there reminds us that we're a part of this story, and that we can make decisions and choose what to look at and discover that joy of exploration that isn't really possible in the same way with machines alone.
Yeah. So now, explain a little bit more the difference between, or the importance of low Earth orbit, because you're going to have a lot of people thinking, well, we always send people to space. We have people in the International Space Station, but explain the importance of being, or the difference between being in low Earth orbit and going beyond low Earth orbit.
Sure, that's a great question. So, on the International Space Station, this is the longest human presence we've ever had continuously in space. The first astronauts aboard the ISS, they got there in November of the year 2000. And we have had that station continuously occupied by humans all the way to the present day through April of 2026. For more than 25 years, we've always had a human presence there. But low Earth orbit is really only a few hundred kilometers up. You can't see the whole Earth all at once from low Earth orbit. You can't see the full disk of the Earth or a full hemisphere. It's sort of like being just a little bit higher than in an airplane, where, yeah, you can see more than if you're close to the ground, but you can't see the whole Earth. You can only see a little bit of it at once. You also move very quickly around the Earth when you are in low Earth orbit. You complete a full revolution of planet Earth in less than 90 minutes. In less than 90 minutes, you go all the way around planet Earth. So it's really zipping by fast underneath you. Whereas when you move farther away, it's just you at a great distance, and the Earth that you're looking at, all you see as far as changes is that slow 24-hour rotation of the Earth. So you're really seeing the Earth from a distance. And there have only been, including the Artemis astronauts, there have only been 28 humans ever who have seen that. Six of them from the Apollo era are still alive, and now from the Artemis era, we have four of them who've traveled far enough away from Earth to see the entire disk of the planet at once, which means when you're there, when you're in the Artemis capsule, you and the three humans in there with you are the only people who aren't either on Earth or in that very narrow low Earth orbital region around the Earth. This is the farthest humans have ever gone into the universe, and there have been fewer than 30 of them that have ever gone farther than low Earth orbit.
So now I have a question for you. Do you think we will be able to reach Mars during our lifetime?
It's really a question of what we invest in. If you had asked me this question 27 years ago, back in 1999, before we had astronauts on the International Space Station, I would have said, yeah, we knew how to get them to the moon with Apollo, and we did it in less than 10 years. And if you developed a space program similar to that, but geared towards sending humans to Mars, we could do it. Back in 1999, it would have cost about $150 billion over 10 years, and we could have had boots on the ground, humans walking on Mars, and then a return trip after that. We know more about spaceflight. We have better technology now than we had back then. With the money, with the will, we could absolutely do this. But it's a question of how much of our resources are we going to devote to that? And that's not a question for scientists. That's a question for politicians. Science can do it. If you give us the resources, we have the technological know-how. We can make this happen. But if you don't give us the resources, or as has often been the case, if you promise the resources and then there's an interruption, or you don't make a sustained effort or a sustained investment, it's all going to fall apart. And that's what happened in the past with our efforts to try and go to Mars. We in general have learned the lesson that, look, if you want to plan, you have to plan this to be 10 years at the most, because if you try to make a 30-year plan in America, all it takes is one year where either Congress or the president says, no, we're not investing in this anymore, and it all falls apart. You might not remember, but back in the early 1990s, George H.W. Bush, our first President Bush, he had a 30-year plan with nuclear powered rockets to take humans to Mars. And that fell apart in the next presidential administration because there wasn't a sustained political will for it. So, technologically wise, science wise, yes, absolutely, we can do it. But it's dependent on a sustained model of funding that we don't have here in the United States if we wanted to do it here in this country.
So I think that's what the advantage of having companies just like SpaceX around, because now when you put private corporations in charge of space flight, they do have a financial incentive to travel this, around space. So they have a financial model, with SpaceX sending satellites into space and then using some of those funds to explore space even further. Because when it comes to government, we know government's very, I guess, dynamic, or each administration just changes from what they want to invest in. That plan, like at least long-term plans, fall through, and that's what's happening with exploring space. Because every 2 years there's an election, every 4 years there's a presidential election, every 8 years the president might change. So we have constantly changing administrations without one constant long-term plan. And when it comes to space exploration, you're saying this is not meant to be a short-term plan, this is a long-term plan. So without a constant plan that several administrations stick to, this will never happen.
I am saying that you do need a long-term plan that administrations will not destroy from one to the next. But it's not my opinion that private space companies are the answer to this.
Mhm.
It's certainly a possibility, and certainly they have an interest in people believing that, yes, this is the path. Let's invest in these private space companies. But private space companies also have an interest in gaining your trust and in
Mhm.
profiting off of you in a way that the government doesn't. The government exists to provide services to people, to bring experts together to do something for the collective good. It's illegal for a corporation to focus on that. A corporation, by law, has to focus on profitability, on their bottom line, on the next quarter of profits. And so, yes, while they certainly are leading the way in terms of spaceflight capabilities, they are the industry leaders in spaceflight, not NASA, as far as the rockets go and as far as the launch vehicles go. Um, but they're also not necessarily invested in achieving something for the good of humanity. They talk a big game, but you also look at what the left hand is doing when the right hand is busy making promises. And
Mhm.
what you are talking about is what would happen in an ideal world. And there are I'll be charitable and I'll say there are elements of that that are happening in our world, but I do believe that it takes something bigger than one company to make our biggest dreams about space exploration and the universe come true, and that we shouldn't be abandoning the idea of investing in something long term together for the
Mhm.
benefit of all humanity.
Yeah, but you know, it's just exciting that so many people are interested, whether it be private or in the public sector, about seeing what's out there. And I think a lot of people do get excited. Now, who has the best interest at heart? That's debatable. But it's we're living in a really interesting time because now we're seeing something new that didn't really happen before. These private companies were traveling this constantly into space. Now we do see that. Now they may be incentivized for to line their own pockets, but it is happening. So now, what do we get out of that? Because I know if they do explore more into space, they're not going to do it under the same or have the same goal as a government would. A government would do it for, let's say, personal achievement, as opposed to a company is going to be for financial achievement. Is that something that's correct?
Well, I mean, if you're pitting those against like the collective achievement of humanity against
Mhm.
personal achievement, I think the government has a long track record of investing in fundamental science, right? The
Mhm.
government is what NASA came out of. The government is what put human beings on the moon. The government gave us the space shuttle. The government gave us the International Space Station. The government gave us collaborations between NASA and ESA and CSA and JAXA and all these other space agencies from countries around the world. This is where it's our goal to work together. Now we don't have that. What we're seeing is a big rise in competitive space
Mhm.
programs. And while this is exciting that like, oh, you can go to space aboard a SpaceX rocket or aboard a Blue Origin rocket or aboard a Soyuz rocket, and you have multiple options for getting humans up into space, it also comes with the downside that,
Mhm.
well, we don't have any regulations on pollution in space.
Mhm.
So we have companies that are launching hundreds of satellites, thousands of satellites, tens of thousands of satellite. Earlier this year, SpaceX proposed launching a constellation of over 1 million satellites. If you came to me in 2019, just 7 years ago, and said, hey, Ethan, how many satellites are up there? Like cumulatively for all of human history, how many satellites have we ever launched that have been active, or whether they're active or not, are still up there? The number would have been a little over 2,000. Today, that number is closing in on 10 times that number. It's getting close to 20,000. And like I said, there's plans that in the next 10 years, we're going to see that number rise into the hundreds of thousands and then into the millions. This is an unsustainable number. I'm very, very worried about what private companies are doing as far as polluting the low Earth environment, because all it takes is a collision, one collision. Sometimes you can't avoid it. If like a solar flare happens and knocks out navigation, these things don't operate until they recover, and that can take up to 3 to 5 days. You get a collision, if there's enough things up there, the debris from that collision is going to collide with more and more satellites, and you can get a chain reaction of things called Kessler syndrome that was first predicted back in the early 1970s, back in the Apollo era. And now that's a reality. And it's the private space companies that are denying there's a problem, that are denying there's anything they need to do about it. And so you do have this idea when private companies get involved that yes, it is about profit, but also they're willing to take risks that the government might not be willing to take. Well, they're also willing to plunder environments and pollute things in a way that the government is not willing to do. And I think it's very important to think not just about tomorrow, but 10 years from now, a century from now, a millennia from now, will the actions we're taking now ruin the environment and maybe even make flying through low Earth orbit with a rocket without getting hit by space debris an impossibility? So, it's one of those words like a lot of people don't think about ideas like sustainability when it comes to things that happen outside of Earth's atmosphere. But that low Earth environment is a very fragile environment. It's the only one we have, and we have to pass through it anytime we want to go deeper out into the universe to explore.
Because when these satellites say they get decommissioned and are not needed anymore, what happens to them? or do they just
I
remain
mean, what
in?
they deorbit. What goes up must come down. If you're in low Earth orbit and you're not needed anymore, decommissioning means you're going to re-enter Earth's atmosphere, and either you're going to burn up, which means all of the things you launched onto that satellite are now air pollution because they've combusted and have entered into Earth's atmosphere. We are currently adding more aluminum into Earth's atmosphere just from deorbiting Starlink satellites than we are from all of the meteors that strike Earth. More aluminum in our atmosphere, which seeds clouds, which increases cloud cover, changes precipitation patterns, has other environmental effects. More of that is coming from deorbiting Starlink satellites than from nature itself, from the whole rest of the universe. And that's today. This is only going to get worse as thing goes on. You also have the problem that a lot of these entries, they don't fully burn up in the atmosphere. And that means they're a collision risk to striking things on the ground on Earth. People have already been hit by deorbiting satellites that are suspected to originate from SpaceX. And in fact, a friend of mine who's an astronomer had one land just 600 meters from her house in Canada.
Wow. So we're basically are working on our own demise in a way.
I mean, what we're doing, it's sort of like if you're not aware of the risks of what you're doing and the harms of what you're doing, it's not like those risks or those harms aren't there.
Mhm.
You're just not aware that they're happening. And I think that people who look at things like Artemis, who look at things like private space exploration, they say this is the future, but they don't understand the harms that it's already causing today. They don't, and if you're not aware of the harms that are being caused, it's really hard to have an informed opinion on, well, what's the responsible way to be doing this, and should we be doing it that way?
So that's pretty similar to what we're seeing with AI data centers and their consumption of natural resources, right? Because we have these private companies uh, building these data centers that need a lot of natural resources to run, especially the need for water to cool these.
Energy and water. Energy and water are the
Yeah.
two big ones that AI data centers need. And we already, those of you who are more than like 5 years old will remember that like we've already had problems with not having enough energy. We've already had problems with energy production and how it's harming the climate. If you put AI data centers in your city, they estimate that energy that could be needed by humans for things like heating and cooling will instead go to AI data centers for data processing. Water that humans need to drink will instead go to AI data centers for processing. And we've already diverted rivers to feed the water needs of various cities, including in Las Vegas and in Southern California, where you live. So, I say like, look, I'm a big fan of progress, of advances in computation, but I'm not in favor of doing it in a way that's going to be a net harm to humanity. There's a big talk of AI data centers in space, and it's just not physically feasible to cool AI data centers in space because space is a vacuum, which means there's nothing to conduct heat away from these spacecraft.
Mhm.
On the ISS, you brought up the International Space Station earlier, we have these giant extendable arms that are used solely to radiate heat and power away from the station so that it can cool itself. The average AI data center takes about 50% of the power it takes to run the whole International Space Station, which means you need an array of solar panels that's almost as extensive as the one aboard the ISS. And you need these enormous extendable cooling arms to come out of it. And that's each AI data center in space. So if you're talking about putting millions of them up there or hundreds of thousands of them up there, you're talking about doing something like taking the entire mass of the International Space Station, the heaviest thing that's up there, and putting hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of times as much mass up there. And in terms of how this is going to affect Kessler syndrome and the pollution of low Earth orbit, in terms of how this is going to affect what happens to Earth's atmosphere when these things come down and deposit themselves into Earth's atmosphere. This is a long-term plan for disaster. This is not sustainable. And so even though there are really interesting things that we can do in space, I would caution people that there are really dangerous and short-sighted things that we can do in space as well. And we are not taking appropriate care to prevent private companies from doing the exact things that we would hope that we wouldn't do as a species.
And what would you propose? Because this is very complicated. We know that AI is going to happen, and we know that these companies are going to continue building data centers. But would it be better to build the data centers in space or have them on Earth, or is there like an alternative that we're not thinking about?
Well, those are our two environments, right? You can do it in space
Mhm.
and you can do it on Earth. Now, on Earth, we have resources. We have resources to deal with these things. If you build these AI data centers in cities, you might have heard of the urban heat island effect if you studied climate change at all. That this says, like, where you have a city with blacktops and parking lots and skyscrapers and all of this, it traps heat inside of it and it increases the temperature locally of a city. If you're someone who lives in Las Vegas, you know all about this because it gets hot during the day in the summer and it stays hot at night because you have all this infrastructure there. When you install an array of AI data centers in your city, a recent study just showed that it increases the average temperature of your city by 9 degrees Celsius or 16 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you don't enjoy it being 104 degrees in Las Vegas, I guarantee you're not going to enjoy it being 120 degrees in Las Vegas instead. So I think if you insist we need to have AI, we need to have this much AI, and we need to put it in all these things, which I'm not sure we do. The United States is the only country insistent on this, even here in 2026. But even if we do insist on that, I would say there's a responsible way to do it and there's an irresponsible way to do it. And we want to make sure we do it in a way that's responsible, where if there are negative impacts, it isn't going to be felt by the humans who are denied water, denied energy, and have to live in inferior conditions because we have AI data centers alongside us.
Wow, that's really interesting, and I like how you brought up the fact that it's going to get hotter because it just seems here in Vegas every other year we reach a new high. And I mean, just last month we already hit 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and
Yeah,
that
the
is
2026 for the Southwest United States has been the hottest year on record for the Southwest United States by something like 10 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not going to last like that. It's not going to do this every year, but it shows us that we do have new temperature extremes that we're reaching that really have not been reached in recorded history for as long as we've known how to measure temperature.
so okay. So now, because this is something that I never really heard of, and I've spoken with climate change deniers, and I'm just trying to really understand perspectives from every different angle. I'm trying to understand the counter argument. I'm trying to understand the argument for it. So this is something that I never really heard before. So basically, it seems like it's relative to seeing so many data centers being constructed and now having to face a lot of these heat issues.
Yeah, so you have to realize whenever you have an AI data center, what's happening at the core of this is no different from standard electricity activity. You take your electricity, you run it through a wire, you have it encounter some system that has resistance to it, and some of that electrical energy gets converted into heat energy. Now, if you don't want to fry your electronics, you need some way to cool that, because if it just gets hotter and hotter and hotter, you're going to break your soldering connections. You're going to have your computer system overheat. You will have chips melt, and your computer will stop working. So you
Mhm.
have to cool it. Now, for most of the computer systems we use air cooling or water cooling, right? This is why you have computer fans, and this is why really high-end gamers have those cryogenic cooling systems in their home build PCs
Mhm.
to get that cooling effectively because you're using more electricity. AI data centers are using more electricity per data center than any computational activity ever has. More than high performance computers, more than supercomputers, more than, any other previous computer. AI data centers are using more energy than that, both in terms of CPU and GPU processing power. So when you have that much electricity being harvested and put to use, you're not just doing compute endeavors, you're also heating things up, right? Because that's what happens when you run current through a wire is it heats up. So what do you do with all that heat? You have to have some way to radiate it away. But most of that heat is going to go, if you're in a city, to the buildings around you, to the ground, and to your surrounding environment. It's not like it's going to go up, up, up and into the atmosphere and you won't see it again.
Mhm.
It's going to stay localized. So if you live in a city and your
Mhm.
city is going to build a large set of AI data centers, you have to be aware this is going to heat your city up. It might make it easier for you in the winter, but it's going to make it way worse for you in the summer. And just when you need your air conditioning the most, that's when the AI data centers are going to be in the greatest demand of energy because they have to cool themselves in the hottest of conditions. So I think one of the things we should warn against and guard against is, look, there's a real danger of people aren't going to be allowed to use air conditioners in their homes and their places of work during the hottest part of the day and the hottest part of the year because that energy is going to go to AI instead. And I
Mhm.
don't think that's something we should allow. If it comes to, do we help humans live happy, safe, comfortable lives, or do we feed the power and the water to AI instead? I think the humans should be more important than the AI is, and not everyone agrees on that.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that is a really great point. So when I heard about this argument that we should just make the data centers in space, I thought I guess that's better for us because now we are basically offshoring these data centers to other planets. I mean, the moon for this example.
I mean, this is a great idea if true. But as a scientist, I have to ask, is this true? Can you cool AI data centers in space better and more efficiently than you can on Earth? And the answer is no. We cool things on Earth
Mhm.
because we put materials in contact with matter, right? We have the air to carry heat away, and we blow fans to carry the air away and bring new air in that heats up and gets carried away. And that's how we cool things. Or we do it with water, which is more effective. In space, there's no air. In space, there's no liquid water. In space, there's nothing to carry it away. It can only cool the same inefficient way that the sun cools, by radiating heat away. And if you
Mhm.
keep powering something, then it's going to keep generating more heat. If you don't want to run into that problem of, oh, it just gets hotter and hotter and then it overheats, you have to build these huge, giant radiators, which are massive, which are expensive, and which don't last. And so you are talking about launching more and more and more things into space, increasing the mass of what's up there, making this other problem that we talked about Kessler syndrome, about orbital overpopulation, and about the what goes up must come down. And when it does, it's going to pollute Earth's atmosphere, and then we'll be breathing that in problem. I don't think this is a scientifically viable solution. And I'm not just basing this on, well, he's a physicist and he says so.
Mhm.
I've talked to people who are much bigger experts than me in this because they work on satellites and satellite engineering and satellite cooling and who built the systems that cool the International Space Station. And this is what they're telling me. they're the people who know. We know this problem exists. We know you can't just say, oh, it's in space, it's cold, it doesn't matter. No, it does matter. The laws of thermodynamics are the same in space as they are on Earth. We didn't learn all of this scientific knowledge to just close our eyes and plug our ears and say, oh, it sounds good to me. Like, no, this has to actually work. If it's not going to work, then this is just an empty promise. And this is a big danger that I have found for myself when it comes to private industry versus an organization that works in the interest of the public good like NASA. NASA is obligated to tell us the truth. The private companies are obligated to tell us whatever they're going to tell us to maximize their profits, whether it's true or not. And I'm very skeptical about that.
Yeah, because that's another good point that causing these satellites to pollute low Earth orbit could impact us in a way. And another thing that I was thinking is it possible to terraform, say, Mars and have the data centers be there? Now, if we terraform, I'm not too sure how that works as we understand Earth to be. If we terraform Mars, are is it going to have the actual uh, the natural environment that we have here on Earth, and then placing data centers on Mars? Is that something that could be realistic? That could happen?
Well, terraforming, you have to keep in mind, is a very long-term goal. What we would likely do in our lifetimes, perhaps, is to build a small domed area on either the moon or Mars or some other nearby planetary object that we could say, well, within this environment, we can have a pressure and we could have liquid water and we could have, more Earth-like conditions. And then, sure, once you're in there, you can say, well, whatever we would do on Earth, we can do in this environment too. But it's very expensive and resource intensive to build and maintain such an environment. Really, what I would be looking for to this is, can we find a way to do computing more energy efficiently where we can avoid this whole problem in the first place? Because for the immediate future, certainly for the next few years and decades, most of humanity is going to be on Earth. And Earth is the most hospitable place we know of in the whole universe by a lot. There's no other environment where humans can live for a long period of time without bringing extra resources that come from Earth. So for me, I say, well, you just have to be really careful not to long-term destroy the environment where we're thriving. And people recognize that, but the answer is, oh, we're going to take the problem and we're just going to put it somewhere close by that's still going to have negative effects on Earth, just different negative effects. I don't think that's a particularly it's not a particularly reassuring solution. So I think terraforming is a long-term option, but the demand for AI data centers is coming way, way sooner than any terraforming endeavor is going to happen.
Yeah, no, I I believe that, and it just seems that we are moving faster than we are able to work, and that's why we're having so many data centers because AI is happening faster than we're even able to put a plan together on what to do with all of this need for data. So I think that's what's happening. And what do you see happening in the short term? Because this is going to continue to happen. And we know these data centers are going to continue being built. And there's really nothing that you could do to stop it because there's just so many people now that rely on AI that there's such great need for AI. What do you see happening in the short term, at least?
If I'm optimistic, I would say the exact opposite of what you're saying. The exact opposite. I would say people would realize that most of what they're using AI for, they don't need. Most of what they're being pressured into use AI for isn't even useful. That if you had one average intelligence human expert instead of what you're outsourcing to AI, you would get better outcomes. And I say this because, like I told you earlier, the United States is really the only country that cares so much about AI. We're the only country in the whole world that's investing trillions of dollars and hundreds of billions of dollars into AI, into the data centers, into putting AI agents everywhere, into inserting them in the workflow. Most people I know hate it. Most
Mhm.
people I know, even the people who work with it, they wish they didn't have to do it. They feel like they're losing their skills, they're eroding their own expertise, that junior people in the field aren't gaining the foundational skills because they're outsourcing them to AI. And other countries don't have this problem. This isn't a problem in Europe. This isn't a problem in Japan. This isn't a problem in China. This isn't a problem in Australia. This isn't a problem all over the world, just here, just in the United States. It's real easy to look at it and say, this is how we're doing it, and therefore this is how it has to be done. But I don't think that's what we're going to be saying 10 years from now. I think we're going to look back 10 years from now. You remember the big data fad where everything was big data. You remember the Internet of Things fad where everything was the Internet of Things. I think AI is that bubble today. I
Mhm.
think most of what we use AI for, we're going to look back and say, look, there are some really good uses of AI and some places where it's really indispensable, but also that's not the majority of use cases. And what we've done is we've inserted it into places where it's actually better to have just expert level humans being there. So can
Mhm.
we have humans who develop their expertise doing this instead? And I think there's going to be a push back on this. I don't know when it's going to come, but I think it's going to come sooner rather than later. And I think these things that you're talking about as inevitable today, if you look back 10 years from now, you say, geez, like, we didn't have to do it this way. And more importantly, we don't have to keep doing this way. We can go back to human experts where you have a human's good judgment at play instead of outsourcing all of this to what's literally just a word guessing machine based on large amounts of what people have said before.
And that's very interesting. I mean, I work in AI. I use AI all the time, but I agree with you. The thing that concerns me the most is the effect that it's having on the environment. And I hope that we're able to figure it out because I believe that AI is useful, at least for my job. I enjoy using it, but the harm that it's causing to our natural resources, I mean, you just can't ignore that.
I mean, you have energy. You can either say, well, look, we should be investing in developing nuclear fusion and expanding solar and wind and other renewable power sources. But instead, we're fighting a literal war right now about oil.
Mhm.
And that's just another worse outcome for the climate. We're talking about how right now, less than one third of the natural area on Earth is still wilderness. Most of it has been overrun by humans. And yet we're not talking about preservation and reforestation. We're trying to get people to not murder and nuke each other right
Mhm.
now. And so I think like one of the big questions I always would wonder if we found an alien species out there, right? Some intelligent aliens out there in the universe. I would ask them, how did you survive your technological infancy? How did you manage to get through this stage where you were growing and you were consuming and you were consuming and you were consuming? How did you get through this stage without plundering your whole planet and making it inhospitable to your own species? Because we haven't figured that out yet. If you take a colony of yeast cells and you put
Mhm.
them in a little dish full of molasses, what the yeast cells will do is they will eat the molasses and they will grow and they will divide and their population will explode. But it won't stop exploding. They'll keep consuming and consuming and consuming. And eventually there's so many of them that they're going to change the pH of their environment and poison it. And all of the yeast cells will die. They will literally successfully breed themselves into poisoning their own environment, and then they go extinct. And my big fear for humanity is that we are just as dumb as a colony of yeast cells when it comes to not poisoning our own environment. We have many, many people who think that water and power for AI is so important that they would rather give it to AIs than the humans who need it to survive, to literally survive. And I don't think our species stands a chance if that's the route we go, right? This is all done for the benefit of humanity. AI can make your life easier in a lot of ways, especially when it's used intelligently. But it can also just plunder our resources and hallucinate at the same time and tell you things that you don't even, it's not even useful or truthful to hear. So I think we have to be very careful with this. And I think we haven't been very careful so far. So I think there is a good, intelligent way to do it. And I hope we find it before it's too late.
And it seems like it is becoming, or at least we're at a point where it's becoming too late. And it's probably past a point of no return. Now we need to find a way to hit the brakes or slow it down in some way, because we are like at the edge of this cliff, and it's just the one wrong bad move and we'll just go over that cliff.
I mean, it always seems that way in a lot of times, but I do want to also give you a message of hope that, like, all of this is technology that we've developed, and we can put whatever guardrails on the technology that we want. For instance, I once used one of the LLMs, and I could not get it to tell me what was true and what was untrue. It was programmed to equivocate. It was programmed to say, well, I'm not qualified to pass judgment on if something's a lie because I can't say if something is intentional or it's just misinformed or all of this. And so I had to train the AI to say, hey, AI, here's what a truth filter looks like. Here's how you decide if something is true or something is not true. So, using the truth filter that we have set up, is this claim true or not? And if you do that, suddenly the AI will tell you, oh, yeah, this is true, this is not true. But you have to do this because the people who are making the AI chatbots, who are making the LLMs, are programming guardrails into it that should not be there. And you have to be aware of this, what those guardrails are, and how to remove them and put the proper guardrails in place, or it's going to misinform you every time. So I think this is a solvable problem, but I think we have to actually want to solve it. I think the more uncritically fawning we are about AI and the more we view it as an inevitability integrated into our lives, the more we lose that ability to actually critically evaluate what's good about it and what should we not be doing with it.
So, do you think there are some human social engineers that are implementing guardrails into our daily lives and preventing us from finding the truth on how to ensure basically our success?
I mean, yes, I know this. This has been well documented. This is the modus operandi of many of the CEOs of AI companies, that they are deliberately putting misinformation guardrails in place to elevate the misinformation that supports them while suppressing the truthful information that would contradict or undermine them. Grok and Elon Musk has been caught doing this. Sam Altman and OpenAI has been caught doing this. It doesn't seem to make a difference, but yes, this is not just my opinion. This has been well documented over the span of several years. So yes, this happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty
But you
scary,
know
but
about this. You work in AI.
I
Surely
do.
you've seen all of this.
Yeah, and I mean, working in AI, I just don't trust Sam Altman. I've something about OpenAI makes me feel like they have ulterior motives and they don't have society's best interest at heart.
I think I would agree with you. And Aaron Schwartz, who you may remember as the famous whistleblower who took his own life back in 2013, he explicitly warned about Sam Altman in particular and said this is a guy you should never trust. He will say anything to get ahead. He will lie to you. He will sell out his own mother for $1. And that is who he is, and you should all be aware of that. And now people are interviewing him like he's some sort of guru as opposed to the grifter that he is. And this is something that AI will not guard you against, is when you are being fooled deliberately by someone who's looking to profit off you, how will you know? The AI not only won't tell you, it was likely programmed by the person who's seeking to fool you to attempt to fool you. So will you be smart enough to see through what the AI is lying to you about in order to get at the actual truth, and will you care? People who are betting the farm on AI are betting that you can't. And I'm betting that as a species we can, because that's how we succeed at anything, is we don't care what someone's saying, what someone asserts. We care about what is true. And you cannot hide the truth for long from everybody.
Oh yeah. I mean, I enjoy the product, but I don't know that company. It just seems off to me. But
There's I have a feeling the more you look into it and the more you look into other AI companies,
mhm.
the more you will see the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, but I truly enjoyed our conversation, and I mean, this conversation could go on for so long because there are just so many different topics to discuss. And apart from just AI, just space and what it all means, and how looking at the past and the formation of the universe, if it's any indication where we're heading as a species, there's just so many different things to really cover.
Well, if you're a fan of reading, I'll encourage you to pick up a copy of my latest book. It's from National Geographic. It's called The Grand Cosmic Story, and it tells you the whole history of our universe from before the Big Bang to the present day. Every time you turn the page, you come forward 100 million years. And then when you get to the present, we talk about the possible different futures that we have. A short tomorrow where we don't overcome our technological infancy and lead to our own demise in just a few hundred or a few thousand years, a long tomorrow where we do overcome these things and can build a successful long-term future for humanity here on Earth, or what we call the longest tomorrow, where we actually realize our dreams of becoming an interstellar species and spreading Earth life throughout the galaxy and maybe even beyond. And so if you want something to look forward to, I'll remind you this future is not written, and it's up to all of us here on Earth to choose our own adventure and make it a good one.
Yeah, and I hope the future is optimistic because I really want it to be. I know there's a lot of discussions on us just uh, becoming extinct, but I don't think so. I think we'll figure it out, and I hope we do. But I mean, this has been a very fascinating conversation to have with you.
Well, thank you for inviting me on, and thank you for letting me have a little bit of time with you and your audience out there.
Well, thank you.
All right, it's my pleasure, Eric. Have a good one, and I'll see you all back here another time.